Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Headliner. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is up, Headliner Nation? Kyle back here to talk about some tight ends, the football kind, with our weekly matchup start and sit analysis. And hey, another good week making some calls at the tight end position. Mentioned it in the wide receiver video. Jake and I were over 70% at all positions this week. Tight end ended up coming in at a crisp 75%. Not quite the 80 that we had last week. What do we have, like 81, 82% last week? But backing it up with another strong performance, 75% of our calls right. CJ, who's your mama? Ricky Seals-Jones, Hunter Henry among some of the hits. Missed out on Zach Ertz. That big play touchdown that he had ended up putting him over the top. Was good to see. I said it was possible, but I was worried about the volume. Volume wasn't really there, but that big play ended up helping him out. Big Bob Tonyan having a decent week for only the second time this season. It's okay. I'm all right missing on that one. And Mo Alley-Cox getting himself a touchdown, pushing him over the 8 points needed to be a hit. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully, fingers crossed, we can put in another strong performance this week. And hopefully we do. But before we jump into the matchups, hey, don't forget the October giveaway is almost up. And if you're going to have a chance to win, you've got to get signed up at Prize Picks. And you can do that by downloading their app, going to their website, whichever one's easiest, creating a free account, but using code word headliners when you do it. When you use code word headliners and then deposit at least $20, Prize Picks is going to match your deposit up to $100. And if you deposit that $20 and use our code word, then ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get entered to win this sweet giveaway for October. And you're not going to want to miss out on it. Doesn't matter if you just signed up or if you signed up months ago. Anyone who has used this account that has already won, you're going to have a shot. So make sure you get signed up over at Prize Picks today and start playing some props this week, because we've been on fire with Prize Picks this year. A lot of people have been winning some money, so I think you need to as well. But enough of that. It's time to talk about them tight ends. Let's jump into it. Our first matchup on Thursday Night Football, Robert Tonyan does just enough every once in a while to pull you back in. But we're not going to look at the 2 good weeks that he's had this season. Instead, let's look at the 5 shitty weeks that he's had this season that are just plain awful weeks, right? So, I mean, almost every single game he's had this season outside of 2, he has single-digit receiving yards. We're not going back to him this week. Arizona has only allowed 5 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, lowest in the NFL. But as we mentioned in the wide receiver video, because guys going into the COVID protocol, if for some reason more wide receivers are to miss time, then at that point, we could potentially look at Bobby Tonyan, but not right now. For the Arizona Cardinals, Zach Ertz, I mean, he's going to be a start. He could be a boom or a bust, though, right? I mean, 47 of his 66 receiving yards last week came on one play. You take out that one play, and Zach Ertz barely did anything last week, right? And that was kind of my concern. First week, not knowing the playbook right away, all these different things could lead to, he could have a good week. He could score a touchdown. I did mention that in the start-sit video, but it was going to be that big play that we were kind of waiting on at that point. He got that big play. I think he's going to be big play dependent most weeks, but in this matchup here, we're going to go with Zach Ertz to score one. For Carolina, not much happening at the tight end position. Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas not doing anything. Maybe we see some some Tommy Tremble next year, but not this year. And Kyle Pitts, dude is starting to finally go crazy, right? What a lot of people expected him to do, he's doing, which is great to see. This is what we expected out of him at points, his big time performances. But as we said in the preseason, not only did he have those big performances coming up, but we need to expect some up and down performances as well. So we're seeing exactly what we thought was going to happen. Now, Carolina barely allows 12 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, but he's not. Kyle Pitts isn't playing as a tight end. He's playing in the slot. He's playing out wide. He's playing all over the place. They're getting him mismatched. They're going to do the same thing against Carolina. San Francisco at Chicago. George Kittle still not healthy. Hopefully we'll be getting him back. I think they said he could end up coming back week 9 is kind of what they're thinking right now for George Kittle. So hopefully they stay on that. But Ross Dwelley, we're not going to go with him this week. Chicago allows the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. And then for Chicago, Cole Kmet, I love him to be a thing, but we just can't trust him right now. Probably not this year. Maybe not until Matt Nagy's gone. But Cole Kmet, we're out again on this week. Pittsburgh at Cleveland is sure going to be one heck of a game to watch. And for Pat Freiermuth, I don't love the matchup. Cleveland does allow the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. But he's going to be getting the Juju targets. I think the deciding factor to whether or not he ends up being a start this year really relies on the touchdown. Can he score a touchdown against the Cleveland Browns this week? If he can, he's going to exceed 8 points. If he can't, he's probably not going to get there. So it's kind of what you think. How lucky do you think you could get with Freiermuth this week? Because it is a tougher matchup, and because I think it's going to be a lot of wide receivers and Najee Harris this week against Cleveland, I'm out on Pat Freiermuth for this week. But going forward, like I mentioned in the tight end video, I definitely think he sees some of those Juju targets, and that helps propel him to a start and some better matchups for him. Now for the Cleveland Browns, we're sitting Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and Harrison Bryant. You know, David Njoku, obviously a great game a couple of weeks back, hasn't done anything other than that. Harrison Bryant hasn't done, Austin Hooper, none of them have done anything, unfortunately, this year. So I think we see a lot of Jarvis Landry, a lot of Odell Beckham Jr. If Nick Chubb is back this week, a lot of running the ball again. Dearness Johnson getting some work in. Not the tight ends, though. Philly and Detroit's going to be matching up a couple of really good tight ends for the Philadelphia Eagles. Dallas Goedert, he's the guy. He's the one guy I trust on this offense right now. He is the guy that should be a top 12 tight end every single week, the rest of the season, and should be a smash start for you. And quite honestly, in terms of guys that I trust, he's probably one of the top guys that I trust right now, even over a TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson, great start to the season, a little bit down, has bounced back the last couple of weeks. Philadelphia allows the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. The wide receivers are going to have a tough matchup because Philly does a good job of stopping the wide receivers. And obviously Detroit throwing the ball a lot out of the backfield to DeAndre Swift. But TJ Hawkinson, I think we see him keep it up this week, which would be great. About the only thing happening in this Tennessee-Indianapolis matchup for the tight ends is there's some fun names to say. Jeff Swaim, Anthony Firkser, Mo Alley Cox, Jack and Doyle, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. But we do have Mo Alley Cox as a start this week. He's going to be touchdown dependent. Probably won't get a ton of volume. But if T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell, obviously probably done until the end of the season, T.Y. Hilton being banged up. If these guys are going to continue to be banged up, I don't understand why Tennessee isn't getting Mo Alley Cox involved in the equation, in the game plan, getting him the ball. Mo needs Mo targets. Cincinnati, New York Jets, CJ Who's Your Mama. He's already set a career high in touchdowns this season, and we're only through 7 weeks. That's how the connection with Joe Burrow is going right now. He's taken a lot of what we've seen go to Tyler Boyd the last couple of years, and to begin the season, he's hauling that in now. Those are his targets. He's becoming that guy. And whatever the Prize Picks prop ends up being on CJ Who's Your Mama this week, I'm going to smash the over on. Now, it's not out yet as of this recording, so I don't know what it is, but I'm smashing the over regardless because the New York Jets, they give up the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. And now I mentioned it in the wide receiver video, right? The New York Jets, they have been tough against wide receivers this season. And even though they got blown out last week by the New England Patriots, they stopped the wide receivers. I mean, it was one big play on a trick play where Kendrick Bourne threw a touchdown pass to Nelson Aguilar. Outside of that, it was Hunter Henry. Jonnu Smith saw some more targets last week. And then we saw the running game also take over with Brandon Bolden being a great receiving target out of the backfield. So this is a matchup again where maybe it's a little bit tougher for Higgins this week. I've got Higgins as a start, so I'm not too worried about it. CJ Who's Your Mama, though, should have a fantastic week. And for the New York Jets, it doesn't really matter. We can just cut that portion of the video out. The LA Rams, the Houston Texans, Tyler Higbee, I'm locking him in for a touchdown this week. Houston can't stop the tight end position. We saw them give up a huge play to Zach Ertz last week. They allow the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. I think it's Tyler Higbee week. I'm feeling it. For Houston, though, still nothing over on that side. Maybe we keep an eye on it as Tyrod Taylor gets back into the fold, but until then, they're sits. New England and the LA Chargers. The Chargers, they're super tough on wide receivers. They give up the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, but they also give it the second most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. So give me some Hunter Henry. Give me some Jonnu Smith this week. They give up almost 20 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Give me both of these guys to have absolutely fantastic weeks this week against the Chargers. And then for the LA Chargers, Jared Cook, Donald Parham, both are going to be sits for me. I think lots of Williams. I think lots of Allen. I think lots of Eckler. New England allows the second fewest fantasy points per game. Not feeling the touchdown this week out of either of those guys. Jacksonville at Seattle. And for Jacksonville, Dan Arnold has now had 2 games and a bye to get acclimated to this, to get acclimated to the playbook, to get acclimated to his team, forming some sort of a connection with Trevor Lawrence. He's had the bye week now to do that. Seattle's been pretty middle of the road this season against opposing tight ends. So I do think Dan Arnold can make some sort of an impact this week. For Seattle, Will Dissly last week, I was kind of feeling a possibility of him. Didn't end up happening. But we saw Gerald Everett get some targets last week. And Jacksonville allows the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. So it is a shot in the dark here. I'm not really going to trust it. Maybe if you're doing like some DFS, GPPs, or if you're doing some prop bets and you want to take a touchdown from Gerald Everett, I would do that. Not necessarily say I would risk starting him in your lineup this week, but I think 8 fantasy points if he gets into the end zone is going to be a lock plus a little extra. Washington at Denver, and Denver's pretty good about stopping tight ends. They've been tough at times this season, but Ricky Seals-Jones, I do love some RSJ, okay? RSJ, the former wide receiver at Texas A&M, converted to tight end. He was a guy that I really liked back in the day. I thought he could make an impact, and now he is, baby. Hey, when Logan Thomas comes back, let's get some 2 tight end sets running here with the Washington football team. I really hope so. But RSJ, he's going to be a start for me again this week. He's averaging 7 targets a game since Logan Thomas went down. I'm going to roll with him once again, going against the Denver Broncos. And for the Denver Broncos, Noah Fant, Washington does allow over 14 fantasy points per game. But we also know this is a matchup where we love the wide receivers. So Noah Fant for me, I like him this week. I don't love him. He's going to be a little bit lower in my top 12. He's going to be a tight end 1 for me. I'm not expecting a huge output though. Tampa Bay at New Orleans, and for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rob Gronkowski, still not sure of the timetable, when he's going to be back, when he's going to be ready to go. The ribs, obviously an issue. So I'm going to be out on the other 2 guys for right now. When Gronkowski comes back, we'll talk about it more then. And for New Orleans, I mean, both of these tight ends have been really up and down, right? Troutman, had an okay game this past week. Not enough to be fantasy viable, but it was okay. I just don't see it consistently happening, especially in this matchup. Dallas and Minnesota, and Dallas, Dalton Schultz. I mean, he's going to be a start for me again this week. Obviously playing very, very well right now. Minnesota does allow the 9th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. But for Dalton Schultz, he's just been way too good for us to sit right now, and talked about it in the wide receiver video. I think this is going to be a shootout, an absolute banger of a matchup. I think these teams are going to go head to head. Tyler Conklin, he is going to be a start for me this week because Dallas does allow over 15 fantasy points per game on the season to tight ends. I don't absolutely love the ceiling because I think we're going to see a lot of Justin Jefferson this week, but there's a chance that Tyler Conklin could end up outscoring Adam Thielen. Maybe not by much, but I think it's going to be close. New York and KC, and there's really only one thing here to say. You don't start Evan Ingram, and you start Travis Kelce. Yo, Headliner Nation, there you have it. My in-depth matchup analysis for the tight end position this week. Make sure you hit that like button for me, and make sure you subscribe if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners. And let me know down in the comments below, you gonna be playing any props? You gonna be playing any prize picks? Now, when I recorded this, they were not out yet on prize picks, but let me know if you find any that you think are saucy that you might want to play, and I'll let you know what I'm thinking about them. Love you all for tuning in to another video. Appreciate it so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.